We got to wake up every morning with a big smile on our face and show the world all the love in our hearts. And that love in our hearts is about fairness and valuing work. House Democrats are here to deliver on the promise to the American people to give hardworking men and women a well-deserved raise. We salute our chairman, Bobby Scott, who's managing the bill on the floor, and some of us will come and go to speak on the floor as we convey our message this morning. But his work was indispensable to getting us to this place, working with members to come to consensus. But we would not be here without the outside mobilizing. So thank you all for being here. You are And I especially want to salute President Mary Kay Henry of SEIU for her tremendous 10 years have passed since we passed an increase in the minimum wage. Democrats are in the majority. President Bush signed the bill, and it was pretty exciting. It was, I have to say, when we passed the bill, House and Senate knew that the president was going to sign the bill. We went outside and had a big rally, and at that rally, Senator Ted Kennedy, who was an important part of this as the chairman of the Appropriate Committee in the Senate, after we had all of our conversation speeches as now, he said, you know what we have to do now? We have to raise the minimum wage. Right away. We just had done that, but he knew that we had to do more. So now we're in the majority again, and here we have. In that 10 years, while families struggle to make ends meet, their cost of living has surged. Inflation has eaten at their wages, and the GOP's special interest agenda has left them behind. America's workers deserve a raise. Yes. Yeah. Why we're so happy this morning is this. The Raise the Wage Act gives up to 33 million Americans a long overdue raise. Yeah. 33 million Americans. And lifts so many people out of poverty. This bill honors the dignity of work, grows the economy, and upholds the bedrock idea of fairness in our country, that hard work deserves a decent wage. Today, we're proud to pass this legislation 171 years to the day that the Seneca Falls Convention stated a simple proclamation that all men and women are created equal. This is the anniversary of that statement. This bill helps to achieve that equality by giving nearly 20 million working women, nearly 1/3 of all working women in our country, 20 million working women a raise. And that is an applause line. It also helps narrow the gender wage gap that targets women of color, putting more money in the pockets of more than 1/3 of working women of color. So this is really important. I mentioned Ted Kennedy's comment as soon as we finished one, time for another, and now list long overdue, but substantial. We'll never stop fighting for the people and for the progress of working families across America. Now, here's the thing. Our agenda when we ran was for the people. Lower health care costs, bigger paychecks. Today, we're talking about bigger paychecks with this important legislation. We also passed, as you know, equal pay for equal work. So this is all in that space, keeping that promise. Now it is my pleasure I want to again acknowledge the great work of our distinguished chairman, Bobby Scott, who came into the chairmanship in January, focused on this day. He will be joining us momentarily, but at the moment, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing to the podium our distinguished majority leader, Steny Hoyer of Maryland. get that majority. I'm going to go to the floor. I'll be right back.
The Speaker is going to the floor, and she's going to speak to the American people and to the members of the House and say why it is so important that we raise the wage. The Speaker mentioned that we campaigned on really two particular points. The first, of course, was reform, which we passed H.R. 1 to make our government more open, more honest, and more transparent. They needed. And thirdly, we said we were going to raise wages. This is a promise made, and today a promise will be kept as we sign. I was the majority leader, and I brought it to the floor. I am the majority leader today, and we've been waiting too long, but it's never too late to do the right thing. And we brought the minimum wage to the floor, and it's going to pass on the floor. We have now seen the longest time between raising the minimum wage since it was adopted in the New Deal in the 30s. Too long to allow people to be stuck at a wage while their cost of their groceries goes up, their cost of their mortgage goes up, their cost of everything they do is going up, and they're stuck. That's not fair, that's not right, that's not what America should be doing. And very frankly, yes, it will benefit people on the minimum wage, but it's going to advantage all of America. All of America is going to be advantaged because they're going to go out spending, they're going to buy groceries, they're going to buy clothes, they're going to buy things they need. Too many Americans are struggling to get by and unable to invest in getting ahead. According to the Economic Policy Institute, as the Speaker said, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour will increase wages for up to 33 million people. That's 10% of America. 10% of America is going to get a raise by this bill. 10% of America is going to be more able to have a better quality of life. 10% of America is going to be able to be better contributing citizens to themselves, to their families, and to America. They deserve equal pay for equal work. And I thank Chairman Scott and the others who worked on writing this bill for recognizing this important issue of civil rights and equal justice, requiring the same minimum wage for those with disabilities. I was the sponsor of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The intent was to include and to make independent those who had a disability. This bill will advance the goal of economic self-sufficiency promised by the Americans with Disabilities Act, which I was proud to help pass in 1990, and George H.W. Bush signed in 1990. The House will pass the Raise the Wage Act today, as I have said, and I hope the Senate will pass it as well. Now, let me introduce a buddy of mine. He and I have known each other for about 4.5 minutes. And he's become a really good friend already. He's a really terrific person. Is a terrific person. Fran Marion is from Kansas City, Missouri, and works at McDonald's.
Thank you.
I hate to admit this, well, I really don't. I eat at McDonald's all the time. And I want to see Fran paid what is deserved for the work that she does, getting me a good hamburger, good French fries, and a good milkshake. Fran, take it away.
Thank you so much, sir. As it was said, my name is Fran Marion. I'm a single mother of 2 teenagers, Raven and Rashad, and I work at McDonald's in Kansas City, and I've been working fast food most of my adult life. I joined the Fight for 15 in union 5 years ago, and I've been standing up with my coworkers ever since, demanding $15 and a voice on our job. And today, I'm so very proud and honored to stand here in Washington, D.C. on the verge of a historic victory, a vote for a $15 minimum wage in the U.S. House of Representatives. I want to thank every member of Congress about to vote yes on this bill for standing with me, the other workers in this room, and the working class across the country. Even though I've worked in fast food for more than 2 decades, McDonald's barely pays enough to support myself, let alone my kids. The company made $6 billion, and that's billions with a B, in profits last year alone. But the people who work there, like myself, have to rely on food stamps and Medicaid just to have a chance for our families to have a chance at survival, if that's what you want to call it. My family's even been homeless, even while I was working 6 days a week. My daughter just graduated from high school, and I'd love to be able to support her plans for college. Thank you. My son plays high school football and also has dreams of going to college one day. But right now, I can't even afford to invest in my kids' future. It's just not right. I want my children to have a better future. That's why a $15 minimum wage is so important to me. It'll mean I don't have to scramble and stress at the end of the month just to pay the bills. It'll mean that workers like me can afford food and health care for ourselves and for our children. And more importantly, it'll support their dreams for a better life, a life better than mine. And when 200 workers walked off the job in New York City in 2012, demanding $15 in the union, nobody gave them a shot. But our demand, it has caught fire. Since the Fight for 15 in the union began, more than 24 million workers have won $70 billion in raises. But in Kansas City, we weren't so lucky. In response to our movement, voters passed a $15 by 72% of the vote. But our state legislature, blocked the raise. That's why it's so important that we need a $15 federal minimum wage, and that's why I'm so happy that the House members who are voting yes are standing with us today. Even though we're celebrating today, we know our fight is not over. Tomorrow we'll turn right back to the fight. This will be on the Senate as well as on President Trump. But they'll also be on McDonald's as well. McDonald's doesn't need to wait for the Senate or wait for the president. It can do what's right for workers, what's right for America. Raise wages to 15. When? When? We're going to get McDonald's to pay $15. And we're going to win 15 across the country. The same way we've gotten cities, states, companies, and the U.S. House to raise pay to $15. By coming together, speaking up, and going on strike. As we say on our strike lines, we work, we sweat, put 15 on our check. We work, we sweat, put 15 on our checks. We work, we sweat, put 15 on our checks. Thank you. We sweat, put 15 on our checks.
Thank you. 6 months ago, we stood here in this room together to announce the introduction of the Raise the Wage Act. And I'm proud to say that today, later today, the House will pass that bill. And this will be the first time in 12 years that a chamber of Congress approves an increase to the federal minimum wage. It's been stuck at $7.25 an hour for a decade. even though the cost of living in this country has skyrocketed. And let me be clear, we are going to secure this important victory, which is one battle in our broader fight on behalf of hardworking American families. We are going to secure this victory because the bill's advocates, in and out of Congress, have been willing to make principled compromises. The bill we consider today is not the same bill that was filed 6 months ago, but because we've had honest conversations, good faith negotiations, and a unified commitment to getting this done, the House is about to pass a strong bill that would boost wages for an estimated 30 million families. This bill is a beautiful example of how the legislative process should work in a country as democratic and as diverse as ours. I support this bill for a simple yet powerful reason. In the greatest country on earth, no person who has the dignity of a full-time job should suffer the indignity of not being able to provide for themselves or their loved ones. My Orlando district is a powerful case in point. It has a relatively high cost of living and the lowest median household income of the 50 largest metropolitan areas in the country. And although it is slightly above the federal minimum wage, the Florida minimum wage is not a living wage. Workers in my district cannot be self-sufficient and support their families on this wage. And this is a painful fact of life for too many people in my state and across this country. And at the same time, I subscribe to the view that you cannot be pro-worker unless you are also pro-business, since most American workers are hired and retained by businesses. And I counseled startups when I used to work in the private sector, and my husband is a small business owner. And I would not support this bill if I thought it would harm small business owners or their employees. To the contrary, this legislation will provide a much-needed boost to businesses, both small and large, and to the broader economy. If lower-income workers are paid a living wage, they will have more money in their pockets. Nearly every economist will tell you that when working families earn more money, they spend it in their local community, boosting sales, creating jobs, and strengthening the economy for everyone. And when I vote yes on this bill later today, I'll be thinking about my own parents, hard-working refugees from Vietnam who worked multiple low-wage jobs and struggled to make ends meet. And it will be one of the proudest votes I cast in this Congress. All right. I'm honored to have been a part of this team effort to achieve a win for working families. In the United States Senate and in state capitals across this country, our fight goes on. Thank you. And now I'd like to yield to Alyssa Barron-Menza, who is the Vice President of Business for a Fair Minimum Wage.
My name is Alyssa Barron-Menza, and I'm Vice President of Business for a Fair Minimum Wage, a national network of owners, executives, and business organizations who believe a fair minimum wage makes good business sense. About 1,000 business organizations, owners, and executives have signed our Business for a Fair Minimum Wage statement supporting raising the federal minimum wage to $15, and more are signing every day. They range from small businesses in Alabama and Kansas and all across the country to big national brands to the U.S. Women's Chamber of Commerce. Raising the minimum wage will be good for business, good for customers, and good for the economy. We need to remember that workers are also customers. Businesses need customers with money to spend. Raising the minimum wage puts money in the hands of people who most need to spend it. In the words of Louisiana Small Business Person of the Year, Angela O'Byrne, increasing the federal minimum wage will create ripple effects benefiting businesses large and small. Raising the minimum wage makes good business sense in other ways. Low pay typically means high employee turnover. Raising the minimum wage saves businesses money in lower turnover and reduced hiring and training costs. Businesses also see lower error and accident rates, increased productivity, and better customer service. Employees often make the difference between repeat customers or lost customers. This increase will not happen overnight. Raising the floor gradually gives businesses time to plan and adjust while experiencing benefits such as increased consumer spending, lower turnover, and higher productivity. Raising the minimum wage will boost the economy and help businesses thrive. It's time to get this done. And now I have the honor of yielding to the Congressman Pocan.
I'm very glad to be here. I co-chair the Progressive Caucus with Pramila Jayapal of Washington State. And I have to admit, I was just on the floor. We both were debating this bill. And I found it interesting, and maybe the right word is incredible, that people who make $174,000 a year, half of which are millionaires, are telling people who make minimum wage $15,000 a year that they have to learn to tighten their belts. Perhaps they should ask them if they can afford a new belt at $15,000 a year. American workers are the most productive and best workers in the world. But in many industries, wages have stagnated and the share going to profits in the top 1% has soared. The Raise the Wage Act would give a well-deserved raise to nearly 1/4 of the workforce, 33 million people. No family in the United States can live on $7.25 an hour and make ends meet. In my home state of Wisconsin, you would have to work 93 hours a week in order to afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment. And there's not a single county in the country where a worker earning the minimum wage can afford a 2-bedroom apartment on minimum wage. I come to Congress with 3 decades as a small business owner. Small business owners know that workers are our customers, our neighbors, and our community. When workers have more money in their pockets, they have more money to spend for their families, and they stimulate the economy. This is especially true in rural areas like my district, where workers have only a handful of employment options. If the primary employer in a rural town is a multi-billion-dollar corporation like Walmart or McDonald's, they can afford to pay their workers $15 an hour instead of holding down wages for the entire community. Today is a very good day because we are about to break a record we just set, the longest stretch in U.S. history without a hike in the minimum wage. It is long past due that we show workers the respect they deserve by putting more money in their pockets, and I thank everyone for being here today. Let's pass this bill and give the American people a raise. I'm supposed to recognize Bobby Scott, but I think he's still on the floor.
Bobby has said, I can't, he's managing the bill. The bill's overcome. In the meantime, we'll praise you to the sky at the press conference. He said, I'll take that.
Let's hear it for Bobby Scott. He has done an amazing job on this bill. It is my honor to next introduce, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Trupti Patel.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Trupti Patel, and I'm a member of the Restaurant Opportunity Center United. I'm also the daughter of Indian immigrants, and I'm a first-generation American. I've worked in the restaurant industry for more than 7 years. I'm here to thank Speaker Pelosi, Leader Hoyer, many members of Congress, and all the workers and advocates who stand behind me who've worked so hard to bring this bill to a vote today. There are millions of people who work for tips, and we only make $2.13 an hour, and we haven't gotten a raise in 28 years, and that's unacceptable. We need to change that. We are professionals, and as members, as hardworking professionals who have years of experience, I demand that we get the same wage as other professionals in other industries. The tipped minimum wage is a vestige of slavery because after emancipation, employers demanded the right to hire newly freed slaves and not pay them anything and just say, live off tips, the generosity of strangers. We have to stop segregating restaurant workers who are today primarily people of color and women. Because when women make only $2.13 an hour, we have to put up with customers saying and doing inappropriate things just to get the tips we need to feed our own families. I want the freedom to make a fair wage directly from my employer before tips. I want the freedom to know how much money I will make each week and the freedom to budget for my life. I stand in solidarity with my brothers and sisters in the restaurant industry in demanding one fair wage. If you pass this bill, you will be the first in the history of the United States to vote to end this legacy of slavery and give tip workers the same minimum wage as everybody else. I think it's time we got a raise. We need you to do the right thing. We need you to pass this bill. Some say I look like I serve America, but I came to shatter the glass ceiling in America.
Good morning. Don Norcross proudly from Southern New Jersey, and a former minimum wage worker. $2.90 an hour. I was a single dad. It was tough to make it back then. It's impossible today. But I think we should start by thanking the Speaker, the Majority Leader, and certainly Bobby Scott, and all of you for keeping this on the forefront of America. Less than 2 years ago, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle decided those in the top 1% had needed a little bit more of a raise, right? So they can invest in that second ship overseas, another house, while they were stepping on the workers that are here today. A decade since we voted to raise the minimum wage. It will be 17 years till this is fully implemented. That's less than 45 cents an hour per year. And they're sitting in there crying with crocodile tears saying it's too much. Saying it's too much. Try to go out and live on $7.25 an hour. Anybody making it? No, not at all. This is America. You work hard, you play by the rules, you're supposed to be able to make it. But what do? We finally, after 11 years, are going to set the record straight. Henry Ford said it right. You need to pay workers enough to buy your goods and services. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. But we have two different worlds. Those on the other side of the aisle who think they can step on us to keep their money. And then we have the reality, the dignity of going to work and earning a decent pay. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to help America get a raise. Thank you very much. Speaker Pelosi.
We have a very special guest here. Can you come back up, Cassidy?
Oh, yeah.
And this is what it's all about. It's about family. It's about our children. Cassidy, you're our VIP today, our very important person. As I say to my grandchildren, do you want to go down the slide? This is about family. $7.25 an hour paid to workers, while the federal government has to subsidize food stamps, housing support, health care in different ways. And that's, why should we be subsidizing businesses or exploiting workers by paying $7.25 an hour? That was 12 years ago when we passed it, when we were first in the majority. As we've all said, the purchasing power of that money has gone down, and the value of work has not. It has increased. So this is part of our bigger paychecks, part of our For the People agenda. We've passed equal pay for equal work under the leadership of Rosa DeLauro. Today we pass this legislation to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So exciting. We will be. Yesterday we passed an ordering lowering health care costs. We passed the repeal of the Cadillac tax, and next week we'll be passing legislation to support fairness in our pensions for workers. So this is about workers. It's about their economic and financial security. And today is a bright day because it affects so many people in our country. I want to thank our special guest, Fran Marion, Not that our members of Congress aren't our special guests, and we're very proud of all of them. And but Fran Marion and Alyssa Barron-Menza, Alyssa was right here a moment ago, and Trupti Patel, here she is. They really are, again, along with Cassidy, our VIPs. They speak for so many people. We're honored by your presence. We want to honor your work by increasing the minimum wage. Thank you all.